In the opening scenes, we see two men meeting in a car. One of them buys a gun from the other, after which their paths diverge forever. In the morning, Julia woke up her daughter Sara, who was running late for school. Among Sara's belongings was a t-shirt belonging to her school friend Lucia, but Julia didn't think much of it, as Lucia often comes to their house. Upon seeing Sara's report card, Julia became angry and yelled at her daughter, who started doing worse in school. As the head of the company, Julia wants her daughter to get the highest grades in school, not to work as a waitress or cashier in the future. As punishment, Julia took away Sara's mobile phone and forbade her from hanging out with friends. Unable to bear it, the girl cried. When Julia drove her daughter to school, an unknown car followed them. After work, Julia complained to her husband Oliver about uncomfortable shoes and about their daughter neglecting her studies. Oliver believes that his wife is overreacting and demanding too much from their children. Julia was surprised that the daughter still hadn't returned home. It turns out Oliver forgot to pick her up from school and was going to go there immediately. Julia called the school and learned that Sara wasn't there. This made the couple worried. Since Sara still hadn't returned, they called the police. The couple's eldest son Alex also knows nothing about where his sister might be. Julia told the detective that this morning she scolded the daughter for her bad grades. This made the detective think that Sara left home because she resented her mother, but neither Julia nor Oliver believe it. Sara has never done this before. However, the detective continues to insist on his own, saying that it's typical for children and teenagers. Alex agreed with this because lately his sister has been showing her character more often. The detective assured the couple that their daughter would return home in a few hours and advised them to remain calm. Julia feels guilty for taking away Sara's phone as punishment. Now they can't even contact her. Leaving his calling card, the detective left. Julia was inconsolable and cried all day. Alex, feeling helpless, tried to comfort his mother. It's already night, but no one in the family can sleep. Julia is convinced that Sara left because of her. Julia only now realized that she had been unnecessarily strict with her son and daughter most of the time. She constantly scolded them and demanded things instead of saying "I love you." Julia's mother acted the same way. Once Julia promised herself not to become like that, but in the end she did. The next morning, the father and son put up flyers about Sara's disappearance throughout the neighborhood, and then Oliver called the detective. It has been 24 hours since Sara went missing, but the police are still inactive. The couple doesn't believe their daughter ran away. Julia can't eat, drink or sleep. Later, she noticed a letter under the front door, apparently placed there by someone. After reading the letter, Julia felt nauseous due to stress. The letter stated that someone is holding Sara. And this person intends to come tonight and talk to all 3 family members. The sender also threatened that if they call the police, they will never see Sara again. None of them understand what's happening. Alex assumed that someone saw the flyer and decided to play a prank on them. Alex also believes they should call the police, but the parents disagree, believing they should strictly follow the instructions for Sara's safety. Alex doesn't understand why his parents think they're smarter than the police, and getting angry he left. Night fell. The whole family is afraid, waiting for the arrival of the mysterious person, but time is dragging too slowly. Alex still believes it's a prank and that if they had contacted the police, the problem would have been solved by now. Suddenly Oliver received a call from the person who had sent them the letter. He assured them that Sara is okay. This person just wanted to make sure before coming over that none of them would do anything foolish, otherwise no one would ever find Sara. Oliver and Julia promise not to call the police. They are willing to do anything to get their daughter back home. Suddenly the call was cut off. Now all they can do is wait. A few seconds later the doorbell rang. Julia was on the verge of a panic attack, but the husband and son calmed her down. Trying to keep himself composed, Oliver opened the front door. Standing on the doorstep was a certain man. All present were seated at the table in the kitchen. The man said he didn't want it to come to this, but circumstances demanded it. If they cooperate, everything will be fine. Alex asked the guest to provide proof that Sara is indeed with him. The man showed them Sara's pendant. Unable to hold back, Julia screamed and attempted to attack the man, but the husband stopped her. Alex was also on the edge. Oliver was the only one who could somewhat keep his composure. Oliver directly asked the man what he wants. The man declared to the family members that one of them is hiding a big secret. It's something very, very bad that caused great pain to someone. And the one who is hiding this secret hasn't told anyone about it. The only thing the man wants is for this person to confess in front of the family. Once this happens, Sara will be free to return home. The man also warned them not to lie or make up a story. If by 6 in the morning the man doesn't receive a confession, the one who stayed with Sara will immediately find out, and then the parents will never see their daughter again. Silence fell. Julia broke it first, saying she didn't understand what secret was being talked about. Out of the blue, The man said that a rose was a symbol of secrecy in ancient Egypt, and since then, many cultures have adopted it. In ancient Rome, a rose was painted on the ceiling in the Senate chamber to remind everyone present that everything said under the rose should be kept secret. The man placed a photograph of a rose on the table, promising that everything said today would not leave the walls of this house. Alex asked his parents if they had anything to confess. Julia realized from her husband's face that he had something to hide. Gathering his courage, Oliver said he was ready to reveal his secret. The man asked Oliver to stand by the wall before he began and first tell a bit about his past. Oliver recounted growing up in a modest, ordinary family in the city. His parents worked hard. Now Oliver owns his own dental clinic. He has a sister and 2 brothers with whom he no longer communicates. Last year, Oliver's friend Roberto was about to sell his house to move with the wife to a better place. Oliver suggested Roberto to contact a real estate company that had a property on sale due to a seizure, which could save money. Oliver was willing to be the middleman in this risky deal and received €3,000 in cash from Roberto. At that time, Oliver had problems in his business, so he pretended to be robbed, embezzling the friend's money for himself. Both Alex and Julia were shocked. The guest asked Oliver if he regretted what he did. Oliver replied yes and was ready to return the money. The man said it would be fair if Oliver not only returned the money but also suffered equal damage. Since 2 dental implants cost exactly €3,000, the man wanted Oliver to extract 2 of his teeth. Julia and Alex tried to dissuade Oliver, considering it madness, but there was no choice. Oliver went to the garage for tools. In the bathroom he hesitated for a long time before doing it. For the sake of his daughter he had to. After taking painkillers, Oliver began. Everyone sitting at the table could hear the screams. Finally, Oliver finished and his evidence showed the man his 2 teeth. The guest declared that it was not the secret he wanted to hear. Everything Oliver did was purely his personal initiative. The man didn't stop him only because he believed that every sin must be paid for. The family members began to get nervous and insult the stranger. The guest had had enough of it and was about to leave, when Julia began to beg him to stay. The man decided to give them another chance and hinted that what he wanted to hear happened during the night. Julia stated that she understood what he meant. Before revealing the truth, she told her son to go to his room, but Alex refused. The man reminded them of the terms of the deal. The secret must be disclosed in front of all family members. To start, the guest asked Julia to talk about her family. Julia said that she grew up in a wealthy family and lost her father at an early age. Julia met Oliver at a party at the home of their mutual friend. Shortly after getting married, they had Alex, and years later Sara was born. Julia considers her marriage to be quite ordinary. However, Julia has something to hide. 7 years ago she joined an international law firm, and a few months ago, her department was restructured because her boss got promoted to branch manager. Julia was an attorney with many successful cases. She hoped to take over her boss's former position, but she had a serious competitor, the boss's wife. Julia worked very hard and considered it unfair. She was willing to do anything for a promotion and hired a woman who was a high-level mistress. In general, Julia arranged everything so that her boss ended up in the car with this woman. Also, the day before, Julia sent an anonymous letter to the boss's wife. Thus the wife saw what happened in the parking lot and quit immediately afterwards. 2 weeks later, Julia got the promotion. Now she regrets what she did and is ready to pay for it. Oliver cannot allow anyone to harm his wife, but Julia knows she deserves punishment because she hasn't been sleeping at night since then. The guest suggested Julia choose her own punishment, but she couldn't think of anything. To motivate Julia to hurry, the guest played her a voicemail from Sara, who talked about how much she misses her family. This made Julia cry. She said she would do anything. The guest came up with a task for her himself. On the street, Julia approached the first man she saw walking a dog and struck up a conversation with him. The man introduced himself as Bruno. He's in computer science and lives with his mom. When Julia invited him over, Bruno agreed without hesitation. Only Alex was sitting in the kitchen, keeping silent. When Julia brought Bruno into the room, he was puzzled to see 2 men. Julia asked Bruno not to pay attention to them and started doing dirty things. The main condition was for Oliver to see it. Oliver was barely holding back his emotions. In 2 days their lives had become a nightmare. When it was all over, Bruno left. The guest sat on a kitchen chair next to Alex, while Julia spent a long time brushing her teeth. Oliver felt absolutely terrible. The guest told Alex that he handled things excellently. Not everyone would have held up as well in his place. Julia cried, asking the husband for forgiveness. He simply hugged her. Right now they are not in control of their own lives. Meanwhile, the guest told Alex that when he was little, his family lived across from a sugar factory. Next to the factory was a house where 3 brothers and 2 elderly people lived. One day the youngest brother ran out onto the road without noticing a truck transporting sugar. At that moment, the man, who was still a boy at the time, heard the most terrifying sound of his life, which still haunts him to this day. Alex doesn't understand why the guest told him this story. Suddenly the man asked Alex to make him a cheese and jam sandwich. Alex silently made the sandwich. By this time the spouses had already come downstairs and demanded the release of Sara. The guest declared that this also was not the secret he wanted to hear. Julia burst into tears, begging this person to bring Sara home. The man gave them another clue: it was physical harm. Hearing this, Alex became wary. The spouses were puzzled because they had never inflicted physical harm on anyone. Entering the kitchen, Alex grabbed the man, telling the parents to find some ropes. The guest seemed only amused by this. Julia tried to persuade her son not to do this, as Sara's life depended on this person, while Oliver searched for ropes at the son's request. In the end, Alex and Oliver immobilized the guest. Alex took the man's cell phone, trying to find the number of whoever was holding Sara. But the number seems to have been erased. Julia started yelling at her son, who endangered Sara's life with his rash actions. However, Oliver agrees with the son, thinking they've endured enough humiliations. Alex suggested using harsher methods to make the man talk. Julia still believed they should play by this person's rules, but nobody supported her. From this moment on, they would dictate the terms. Julia refused to watch this. For Sara's sake, Oliver and Alex were ready to do what was necessary. But before that, Oliver gave Alex one more chance, demanding to know where Sara was. However, the man remained silent. This forced Oliver and Alex to act. But it didn't help. The man kept silent. Alex told his father that they had to do something worse to make this scumbag talk. Despite the father's protests, Alex began to use physical force. Hearing screams, Julia ran there and stopped her son. She realized that Alex was doing this just to avoid revealing his secret. When everyone calmed down, Julia treated the wounds on the man's face and apologized. She also asked the man if they could resume the deal if she let him go. The man demanded to bring his phone. Later, they gathered again in the kitchen. It was Alex's turn to speak. But first, like his parents, he had to tell a bit about himself. Alex is studying at college in the fine arts department and is popular with girls. But he also has a dark side. Alex revealed that some time ago he and his friends were out drunk at night. When they saw a guy from their college who had a non-standard orientation, they decided to teach him a lesson. Alex was the one who initiated it. The hooligans filmed everything on their phones and threatened the guy that if he told anyone about it, they would show the video to everyone in college. Listening to this, Alex's parents were shocked. Alex regrets what he did and is ready to pay for his actions. The man ordered him to go to the kitchen, and the spouses were to wait here. Julia and Oliver felt powerless to help their son in any way. The man demanded that Alex hand over his phone and take a carrot and butter from the fridge. Alex was horrified to realize what he had to do to atone for his guilt. The guest wanted to film it on the phone and then send it to all of Alex's friends on social media. Alex couldn't bring himself to do it. Suddenly the guest asked the guy when he would dare to confess his non-traditional orientation, which made Alex burst into tears. In the end, the guest returned Alex's phone. So Alex experienced his biggest fear, but the worst didn't happen. A few minutes later, the parents saw their son running upstairs. Alex was on the verge of hysteria. Julia and Oliver demanded the guest to explain what all this meant. The man said that the secret Alex revealed was wrong. While Alex was about to call the detective, the guest reminded the spouses that there were only 10 minutes left until 6 in the morning. The man gave one last clue: it happened here, in this very house. The spouses remembered that Alex usually brings girls home. Perhaps this is somehow related to the secret their guest wants to hear. Julia went after her son, but he locked himself in the room, while Oliver directly asked the guest which of them he wants to hear the secret from. From the look on his guest's face, Oliver understood what was meant and closed the door. While Julia tearfully begged Alex to come out, Oliver said he was ready to tell his secret on the condition that his family doesn't find out about it. Oliver is willing to pay any amount of money just so his wife and son don't learn the truth. It wasn't according to the rules, but the guest was willing to compromise. Oliver recounted how 2 weeks ago on a Saturday, Sara's school friend Lucia stayed overnight at their house. When night fell, Alex, as usual on weekends, was out with friends, and Julia went to visit her mother. So Oliver was left alone to look after the girls. When everyone was asleep, a terrible decision came to Oliver. He gave Lucia an anesthetic he kept at home and used in his clinic, after which he fulfilled his secret desires. The next morning, they all had breakfast as if nothing had happened. Oliver realizes his guilt and is ready to atone for it. The guest wants Oliver to rid himself of what makes him a man. Oliver said he doesn't have the courage, when suddenly the guest's phone rang. It's already 6 in the morning. Time's up, but the guest asked whoever is currently holding Sara to give them another 10 minutes. Since Sara's life depended on it, Oliver did it. Julia heard screams. The guest, who turned out to be Lucia's father, leaned over to Oliver and said that fortunately Lucia remembers absolutely nothing about it. But traces of an anesthetic were found in her system. As he said this, the guest couldn't contain his emotions. Of course he will keep his promise and release Sara. Descending downstairs, Sara saw the guest leaving. In the kitchen, Julia found her husband in a terrible state. Julia was about to call an ambulance, but Oliver begged her not to do it. All this time, the guest's wife was waiting for him in the car in the parking lot, while Sara was sleeping in the back seat. Taking the gun, the guest was going to take Sara home. Upon hearing the daughter's voice, Julia rushed to her and hugged her, crying with happiness. At that moment, the guest revealed the truth to Julia. It turned out that Sara had experienced the same thing as Lucia. Looking at her husband, Julia couldn't believe he was capable of such a thing, while Oliver kept repeating "forgive me." Hugging her husband, Julia pulled out the gun. A second later, the guest and his wife heard a gunshot and the sirens of police cars. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.